Good morning, you join me here at Pomona stop in Zone 2 of the Manchester Metrolink. I haven't done a Metrolink video in a good while, so I thought what better way of restarting Metrolink videos than checking out the Eccles line. So today I'm going to be looking at the facts which you may not have known about regarding the Eccles line on the Manchester Metrolink. But first let's have a little look at the brief history of the Eccles line.
So yes, the history of the Eccles line ties in with the redevelopment of Salford Quays. Salford Quays was originally a large shipyard built by the Manchester Ship Canal Company, allowing ships to reach Manchester from the sea, despite Manchester being 35 miles inshore. At its peak, it was the third busiest port in Britain. However, like with a lot of ports in Britain, Salford Quays ports were subject to deindustrialisation and closed in 1982. Salford Quays was eventually acquired by Salford City Council, who redeveloped the area with new commercial, residential and office space, with the area being nicknamed Canary Wharf of the North. The area had no good rail links and pretty poor bus connections, so in 1986, plans were put forward for a new Metrolink line to Eccles through Salford Quays. Legal authority for the line was gained in 1990, and in 1995, a new extension from Cornbrook stop to Eccles, just 4 miles long, was confirmed as Phase 2 of the Manchester Metrolink, with funding provided locally and none from central government. The line was constructed with 11 stops, opening as far as Broadway stop on December 6, 1999, opened by Tony Blair, with the line reaching Eccles on the 21st of July 2000. The line has since had an extension to Media City UK, which opened in the 2010s, with the line having an every 12-minute frequency to Media City and to Eccles. But the line between Pomona and Harbour City has an every 6-minute frequency. 6 new T68A trams were originally built for the line, with these being withdrawn and replaced by new Bombardier trams in 2014. Anyway, now we've had a little look at the brief history of the Eccles line, let's rejoin me at Pomona to have a little look at that pretty interesting stop.
So yes, here at Pomona station, or stop should I say, it's not desolate, but it is isolated. I mean, you can see there's buildings all around me, but there's no way of really accessing them. Pomona stop here really only serves, well, some of those buildings that you can see behind me. It is rather isolated. The stop here at Pomona isn't really located next to anything of relevance. Of course, this whole area, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, would have been hugely industrial with the Manchester Ship Canal. There are several former docks, shipyards, just to the east of Pomona, which are still abandoned to this day. They're due to be redeveloped soon. But this whole area still feels like it's not entirely rebuilt. There's still a lot of abandoned infrastructure from the old shipyard days. But I guess the isolation of the stop is probably what Pomona is or was most known for. For a long time it was the least used stop on the whole of the Metrolink. For example, in 2021 the stop had just 23,730 entries and exits, despite being the 8th most used stop in terms of the amount of trams which served it. 3,304 trams served this stop per week. So despite getting a huge number of trams serving the stop, basically nobody used it until the Trafford Centre line opened, and Pomona has now shot up through the ranks in terms of least used stops. Why was this stop built in the first place? The Trafford Centre line didn't come here until 2020, but they actually planned for it all the way back in 1999. When the stop opened, they actually opened it with provision in place for the Trafford Centre line. They built some blocks directly after the stop. So when trams leave to go to Eccles, they branch off towards the east, heading northwards towards Exchange Quay, the next stop. But they left provision for the line to just continue straight east towards the next stop on the Trafford Centre line, which is Wharfside. So I guess that's why the stop was built. It was built in provision for the Trafford Centre line, for this stop to be a junction. And I guess maybe they guessed that this whole area was going to be redeveloped one day, because it is in the process of being redeveloped. The Trafford Centre line construction didn't begin until 2016, with it opening, I believe, in March 2020, a day before lockdown or something ridiculous. So it hasn't really seen the usage that people expected it because, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. But now, the Trafford Centre line is a pretty successful line, and one that we will cover later in this channel, so do subscribe if you haven't done so already. The stop here hasn't really had a lot which has happened to it. In 2007, a tram derailed coming towards the city from Eccles. It was a minor derailment because of defects with the track. There were no injuries reported, and it basically has closed the line for like a day or two. So I did mention the regeneration of the docks around here, and the Peel Waters Group have currently put in planning for a new 2,600 home project on 25 acres just west of the Pomona stop. 15 acres of those 25 would be a public space, including a 5-acre dockside park. Pomona docks previously did have up to 5 docks in its heyday, and with all but one of these docks being infilled, but there is still one of the docks which you can very clearly see from the tram between Cornbrook and Pomona, and you can even see the lock from where you would be able to get access from the dock to the canal. Weirdly, Pomona in the 1860s was once home to the Pomona Gardens, and with a palace being constructed to house these gardens with up to 100,000 visitors a year visiting these gardens. However, I don't know exactly when they were destroyed, but I assume it probably was, you know, a good 60, 70 years ago. Maybe someone in the comments can let me know about Pomona Gardens. Also, Pomona was home to the first and only club on a ship in Manchester. The North Westward Ho was a ship which was put in the 1970s, just to the west on one of the old dockyards. It advertised itself as the only floating pub and club in Manchester, but closed in 1981, and I believe the shipwreck was removed and dismantled not too long ago in the 90s or 2000s. But yeah, I mean, Pomona itself and this whole area, I mean, Salford Quays is directly behind me here. Of course, the whole video is going to be sort of looking at Salford Quays, because that is why this line was constructed, of course, to serve the new Salford Quays regeneration. Canary Wharf of the North is the nickname for Salford Quays, and that's where we're going to go now. The next stop is Exchange Quay. I will just preemptively warn you that quite a lot of the stops between here and, well, through Salford Quays aren't entirely the most interesting stops. I've tried to come up with some interesting things about them, but in all honesty, some of them are rather boring, including the next stop of Exchange Quay. So let's go get a tram over to Exchange Quay. Right, hello to Exchange Quay, my first ever time in the Salford Quays area, and it very much feels like a, you know, 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s, 20s regeneration project. There's a lot of office buildings from like the 80s, and then there's some newer residential blocks. And as you can sort of hear behind me and see behind me, there's more construction work going on. So definitely a thriving area of Manchester and Salford. You do sort of feel for the office industry. COVID has absolutely killed it off. But yeah, it definitely seems as though, at least in terms of residential areas, this place is still a busy, thriving area. So what is there to talk about Exchange Quay stop? Not a lot really, except it looks very 90s, just by the design of it, the shelters, the red floor bricks. I don't know why that to me signifies 90s, but it does. It's a weird sort of, it feels like, yeah, 90s, early 2000s. It does a job. It looks decent as well. Now, the Exchange Quay office complex is owned by the Hunter Property Fund, who purchased the site in November 2013. It's located close to Aldhall Hall Museum and the Trafford Swing Bridge, which is literally, I can just see it in front of me there. It's also a pretty busy stop during match days at Manchester United at Old Trafford. They use this stop. It's only a 10-15 minute walk from Old Trafford, so this is one of the designated stops for Manchester United fans or football fans to come and watch football at Old Trafford. Who would want to do that? I don't know. But yeah, there's really not a lot to say about Exchange Quay, so we might as well go to the next stop, which is called Salford Quays. So we're going to go to the centre of Salford Quays now. So yeah, let's go to Salford Quays. Well, we're already in Salford Quays. Let's go to Salford Quays Metrolink stop. So yes, there is a sort of tram level crossing here. You might be wondering why I'm walking and not getting a tram, because the next one was in 13 minutes, which is kind of stupid when they're meant to be every 6 minutes. So I'm walking to Salford Quays, it's only a 6-minute walk, so yeah, not too bad. So there behind me is Salford Quays tram stop. I've sort of come away from it because copyright music was being played from a pub next door. So yeah, we are in, I guess, the centre of Salford Quays. I'm not sure why this stop in particular is called Salford Quays, when the whole area is called Salford Quays. But it is worth noting that, I mean, if you look behind me, there's a lot, especially if you look on Google Earth, there's a lot of abandoned areas here. If you look back on Street View, this whole area were all old offices until about 2017, 2018. I'm not sure what happened, if there was a reason, but this whole office complex along here was demolished. And all these offices which I just mentioned, they were called Waterfront Quay, apparently. Now, yeah, there's not much to shout home about regarding Salford Quays station stop. There's a McDonald's and a Starbucks right opposite it. There's a Premier Inn over there. I mean, you do get a good skyline over towards Salford, over there, and Salford Quays, and yeah, this whole area, it's not bad. It's nice, but there's just not a lot to talk about. It's all just very much sort of, there used to be a lot of industry here, and then it's been regenerated into offices and residential areas, and the Metrolink goes through here too, and that's sort of all I have to say about Salford Quays in general, not just the stop. But there's one interesting thing to say about Salford Quays as a stop, is that when we leave Salford Quays, going towards Media City and Eccles, we actually go up the Furnace Ramp, which is a small viaduct which goes over, I believe, a car park and a few other things, and it's the only viaduct on the Eccles line, I believe, past Exchange Quay. So I guess that's sort of interesting, but that's sort of it regarding Salford Quays. So let's go to the next stop, which is sort of more of the same, at Anchorage. I promise things get more interesting as we get closer to Eccles. Here at Anchorage, another sort of nothing stop here in Salford Quays. It is named after the Anchorage building, which is directly behind me here. There's not a lot to talk about, really. It's sort of more the same, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties sort of buildings. Now, Anchorage is located pretty close to Grain Wharf and the big red bridges. Directly adjacent to the Anchorage building, as aforementioned, which was constructed back in 1991. And the Ada building, which is, or Eda, don't know which way, how you pronounce it, I think Eda, which is just next to me here, that was constructed in 2021. It's the 27th tallest building in Manchester and the 6th tallest in Salford. One very nice thing about this line is actually the amount of grass which there is in the middle of the tracks. I believe they used concrete, which has the ability to grow grass from inside of the concrete or on top of the concrete, which gives it a very nice look. Now, I just missed a tram towards the next stop, but it's fine because it is literally just here. The next stop down the line is Harbour City, which, well, it's literally just here. So it's really not very far away. So yes, this is Harbour City tram stop, which you can sort of see. This is the only tram stop on this line which has staggered platforms. Why? I think it's because there's not a load of room between the road and the tram platforms, so they couldn't fit two tram platforms in a row here, right adjacent opposite each other, so they're staggered. Again, we're in very much 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s office space, but yeah, there's not much to talk about here except that this is sort of the junction between Media City and Eccles services. So if you wanted to get a train to Eccles and you were on a Media City train, you would get off here and wait for the next Eccles train. Now what I'm going to do is get a train from Eccles to the next station past Media City, because the Eccles services through the day don't call it Media City. That is Broadway, which was the original terminus of the line. We're going to go up to there, so I'm going to take a tram to Broadway, walk back to Harbour City. I'm going to time myself for something which will become apparent later, and then we'll go to Media City UK. Welcome to Broadway, another nothing sort of stop. It's even more desolate than quite a lot of the other places. A lot of the buildings here are pretty brand new, so 10-15 years ago I'm not sure what would have been here. But this was the original terminus of the Eccles line in 1999. December 1999 it opened as far as Broadway, because from here on towards Eccles it is on street, on road running, and that didn't open until I believe it was July 2000. So only for half a year or so this was the terminus, and now it is sort of the junction point for Media City UK services. As I've sort of mentioned before, through the day most of the tram services to Eccles skip Media City, and Media City gets its own service from the Etihad campus. But in the early morning and late evening times, all services call at Media City and here at Broadway. But yeah, if you're going from here to Media City, it's quicker to walk than get the tram, unless there happens to be a direct service in the early morning or late evening or Sundays or something. But yeah, I mean, I can see the ITV studios for Media City. We will look at Media City very shortly. There's a lot to talk about there. There's not a lot to talk about here. On this ticket machine it says Monday to Friday before 7 AM and after 8 PM, Saturday before 9 AM and after 6:30 PM, and all day Sunday and public holidays. That's when Eccles trams call at Media City. Now, I did say at Harbour City that I was going to come here at Broadway, then walk back to Harbour City. I didn't have too much time to explain why, because the tram was due, but there is a reason. During these irregular times where Eccles services call at Media City, I actually think it is quicker to walk between Broadway and Harbour City, or vice versa, than wait for a tram. For example, if I'm going from here at Broadway to Harbour City when the services call at Media City in the early mornings and late evenings, I think it would be quicker to walk than actually get the tram. Now, looking at the timetables, it is 6 minutes to get the tram between Broadway and Harbour City when the services call at Media City UK. So I'm going to walk it and see if it's quicker or slower. Is it worth getting the tram, or at that point do you just save some money and walk? So I got my phone, I'm going to time it. Let's walk from Broadway to Harbour City.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's basically 2.5 minutes on the dot to walk between Harbour City and Broadway, so that's all the proof that you need. That it's quicker to walk between the two than get the tram when the tram calls at Media City UK. Anyway, I'm going to go get a bus or walk to Media City because the next tram's in like 10 minutes or something. Hello, you join me from Media City UK. I don't think Media City needs any introduction. Of course, it is basically the main hub for live TV and TV in the UK. BBC and ITV both have studios here. The whole area is just very modern. There's a massive theatre, a massive shopping centre. This whole area is very nice, except it's absolutely freezing and really windy. Now, the tram stop here is the newest on the Eccles line, opening in September 2010. It's a 0.22 mile branch line off of Harbour City tram stop and Broadway. A little triangle junction brings you off to here at Media City, with services terminating here from the Etihad campus. As I mentioned at the next stop, geographically towards Eccles, Broadway, not every service calls here at Media City. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Basically half the services pass through, the Eccles services don't stop here. Now, the reason why not every service calls here is because it's a single branch line, it's single track, and it's quite complicated. If you want to get the tram going from Eccles to Media City, you have to cross over the line twice. It's just quite time consuming. Now, why does not every stop call here at Media City? Basically, it's because it's a single track branch line, and it would be, well, it just wouldn't be smart to stop every service, because they would have to cross over all the tracks, go through the single track branch, and then turn around here at Media City. It's too time consuming for every 6 minute service here at Media City UK, hence why not every tram stops here. It would just it would make punctuality go down the drain, basically. So it opened in September 2010, on the 20th of September, and the day after, the 21st, a tram derailed here. Basically, a driver from Harbour City was coming into Media City past the signal at danger. That triggered all the points to go for that tram to go into Media City. There was a tram leaving Media City and the points were set incorrectly and it derailed. It was a very minor derailment, nobody was injured, except I believe the tram derailed into one of the catenary posts and that damaged it. But yeah, a rather unfortunate first few days of service for the tram stop here at Media City, UK. Now I did say that Media City needed no introduction, but there is quite an interesting history. Basically the BBC wanted to move to a new location from their Manchester Oxford Road broadcasting house. They wanted a new home and they picked here in Salford City for it. They moved broadcasting house as well as the TV centre in White City in London, with the name Dock 10 now being the main studios for the BBC. I think BBC Sport, BBC 5 Live, BBC Breakfast, a lot of the radio and news for the North West. Coronation Street's sets are literally just across the canal basin here. Warner Brothers and the University of Salford also have a presence here at Media City. Blue Peter, Mastermind, Dragon's Den, CBBC and Match of the Day are also all filmed here. Directly opposite the basin is the Lowry Theatre, or Lowry, I think Lowry sounds better, which is a super modern, ultra modern theatre, opened in October 2000 by the Queen, been widely praised for its stunning architecture, whilst being basically one of the flagship pieces of architecture here in the regeneration of Salford Quays. The Imperial War Museum North is also here, which now has some tram stop on the Trafford Centre line. You can actually see the trams when they're coming in on the Trafford Centre line. The whole area around here does feel quite nice, as you know, the big shopping centre. It's obviously all very modern, regenerated. I'm sure in the summer, when it's not freezing cold, I'm sure it's actually really nice here. I definitely need to visit the Imperial War Museum one day. Maybe I can do that when I go and look at the secrets of the Trafford Centre line. Now here at Media City UK, a rather odd thing happens, which was documented in a video by Metrolink Insights. I'll leave the link in the description below, so I'll very quickly summarise it. Basically, because of how the Metrolink system works, trams must go right up to the edge of the platform before the signal will be able to turn to proceed and allow the tram to move on with its journey. So they will have to go all the way down there to the buffers to open the doors and tell the system that they've got to Media City and allow the doors to be opened, but then they must come all the way back out here to the red line just by me, stop, press a button, the RTS ready to start button in their cab. That will then signify to the system that the tram is ready to proceed and leave Media City UK, and then it will turn the signal to proceed and allow the trams to leave Media City. So basically it's a really odd phenomena where trams sort of had to stop twice. They close the doors, pull up to the end of the platform, stop again, sometimes open the doors, to basically alert the system that they are ready to go, because that's how the system works, I guess. Now I'm going to go to the next station, which would be Broadway. We've already been there though. So I'm going to go to the next stop after that, which is Langworthy. I think I'm going to get the bus there, because if I get the tram it means I have to change and I'm not sure what the times are like. So I'm probably going to get the bus, the 50 bus, to Langworthy, and we'll have a look there. And then there's only 4 more stops, including Langworthy. So we're nearly there, which is good because I'm freezing and it's about to get dark. So let's go to Langworthy, the next stop, not along the line, but the next stop in the video. Well, I've got the bus here to Langworthy, where there's not much noteworthy to say. I apologise for that. Now, the stop here is, well, the most relevant thing, or most interesting thing, is that it's actually close to an abandoned railway station. We now run parallel to the electrified Liverpool to Manchester line, all the way from here to Eccles. And there was a former station here called Seedley, which opened in May 1882 and had 3 platforms at its peak. It closed in 1956, with all the remains being destroyed when the M602 parallel to the railway was constructed. Apart from that, yeah, not much to say. The station's pretty much like the others on the line. We now run on the road, well, from Broadway all the way up to Eccles we now run on the road, and then there's these gaps here for the stops. Not too sure what was here before the stop was constructed in 2000 or opened in 2000. I'm going to imagine just nothing, a grass field, or maybe there are more lanes to the road or something. But yeah, not much to say about Langworthy. Like I say, not much noteworthy to say. But the next stop of Weaste actually seems to have quite a bit of history to it. So let's get the tram to Weaste and have a look at that. Right then, tram behind me, welcome to Weaste stop, which is not a complete waste of a stop, I apologise. Although maybe they make bread here. I apologise once again. Now I'm walking out of the stop because this stop has some very interesting history with regards to an old tram depot which was here at Weaste. And I believe, looking at Google Street View, there are still some remnants of tram tracks here at Weaste. Look at that, there they are. So I believe this building directly next to me used to be an old bus garage for Salford Bus Company or something, which I believe closed in the 1980s. And then the tram tracks along here ran to a tram depot, which I believe was like the Salford Tram Company or something, which I assume closed quite a long time ago. I couldn't find any exact dates online. But yeah, this old tram track here used to run to an old tram depot which was destroyed in 2006, if I recall correctly. And now I believe it is a block of flats. I wonder if there's anything here to commemorate the tram tracks or the tram depot, or if that is just it. It ends here at this block of apartments. But yeah, very much some old tram tracks here, an old junction. I don't know how old they are, but yeah, I can't actually remember if there's much else to say about Weaste really. I think the pun on bread and waste was about all I had on my notes. So yeah, but this building I'm walking on now, I think was either part of the tram depot or part of the bus depot, or maybe they were both the same thing. Maybe they're all part of one big building. But this still survives. I believe it's offices or something. And it looks very grand, this building. I wonder if it's grade 2 listed. One interesting to say about here at Weaste is that it was actually home to the Willows, which was the former rugby ground for Salford City Reds, which had a capacity of 11,000. They moved out of the stadium in 2011 to a new stadium in 2012. Now there is a turn-back track here at Weaste, so trams can terminate here if needed. There's also a branch line freight-only railway track, which is just east of here at Weaste, which I believe goes to a cement firm. Looking at real-time trains, it gets one scheduled train arriving and departing each day, but usually that service gets cancelled, and it's usually about once a week that a freight train comes down to the Weaste cement depot. That's about all there is to say about Weaste. So let's go to the penultimate stop before Eccles, which is Ladywell. Hello, welcome to the penultimate stop on the Eccles line here at Ladywell, where there's, well, not a lot to say about it. This stop is named after the Ladywell area, and it's also named after Ladywell roundabout, which is immediately to the east of the stop. The tram lines dive under the roundabout completely and then pop out the other side to Eccles interchange. I think we are really close to Eccles as a place. I think it's about, what, must be 2 minutes on the tram or something, 2 minutes on the bus, probably a 5-minute walk. We're really not very far away from Eccles town centre. I mean, you can see the buildings, the skyline of Eccles, if anybody's ever said that. And yeah, there's really not much to shout home about regarding Ladywell. We're 450 metres away from Eccles interchange. One interesting fact is that this was the first purpose-built Metrolink park and ride stop. I think there's about 350, 400 parking spaces here at Ladywell. I believe it's also pretty popular for match days. Man United fans can drive up here to Ladywell and then get the tram down to Exchange Quay. And it's so busy that there are people parking on the double yellow lines here. But yeah, there it is, the first Metrolink purpose-built park and ride here at Ladywell. And yeah, that's sort of it. There's a shopping park nearby with a bunch of houses. There's not much to it. And I'm thinking that I might get a bus into Eccles or walk. I think the next tram's in like 10 minutes, so I don't really want to do that. Right then, made it to the terminus of the Eccles line at Eccles, that tram behind me. Literally 2 minutes to get from Ladywell to Eccles. The stop here opened in July 2000, along with the rest of the line from Broadway over to Eccles. The stop here is just 300 metres away from the railway station, with a new bus station constructed alongside the Metrolink stop a year after opening in 2001 to create a pretty big interchange, I guess. Eccles itself, like a lot of towns on the outskirts of Manchester, was a market town which thrived during the Industrial Revolution. There were lots of mills here, factories and foundries being constructed around the area, with the nearby ship canal providing huge employment, with nearly 2,000 jobs provided to people in Eccles at the Manchester Ship Canal. Eccles currently has a population of 40,000 and, like a lot of areas, has suffered deindustrialisation and relative poverty. Salford City Council, who administrate Eccles, have come up with a big regeneration plan. I think they've demolished the shopping centre. They're going to completely reconstruct the town centre, with Charles House also being demolished. I think a lot of car parks and a lot of the town centre, which was sort of reconstructed in the 50s and 60s, has been demolished and is currently being rebuilt. I did talk about relative poverty. 35% of the people living in Eccles suffer relative poverty in 2015, so I imagine that has only skyrocketed since COVID and the cost of living. The stop here is just a single platform. It's really nothing too special. I think the main talking point is that I can see a church over there and that there's a Weatherspoons across the road. Yeah, that's sort of it. If I'm being honest, the Eccles line isn't the most impressive or interesting or, yeah, fascinating line on the Metrolink. It was constructed in the late 90s, early 2000s for the pure purpose to boost the Salford City regeneration and, I guess, serve places like Eccles, which probably didn't get much great transport until the Metrolink came. But yeah, we've been to all the stops on the Eccles line from Pomona up to here in Eccles, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. So smash like, smash subscribe. Thank you to my YouTube and Patreon channel members. You'll be getting your shout out shortly. Join my Discord server, link in the description, and follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky, also links in the description below. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Sorry if my enthusiasm has dwindled throughout this video. It is freezing and cold and wet and, well, basically just Manchester weather. So yeah, it's not been the most enjoyable of filming days, to be honest, but I hope you've enjoyed nonetheless. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
And of course, a huge thank you to my YouTube and Patreon members, including my first class members Aaron Barry, Crispin McKee, JBNEL and Phil Smith. My business owned members Andrew Bowen, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Connor Gregg, Clive's Travelling Trains, Daniel Burford, Dave CDF, JTecho, Gallialev, Lewis C21, Martin Thomas, NJTE, Ollie G, OVTUG Alex, Real, SZWL, That Transport Girl, Train Life GB, Tom Kennedy, Welsh Train Enthusiast, Will Ho and Zach Renfrey, as well as my standard premium and standard class members. Thank you all. I really appreciate your support and you help to make these videos possible. Thank you. Once again, thanks for watching. Check out my Discord server, Twitter and Blue Sky in the links in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.